You are professional students. You are welcome to class once again. And in this class, we want to look at introduction to sampling method. We just completed source of data, a method of data collection. Let's look at sampling method. And when you conduct research about a group of people, it is really possible to collect data from every person in that group. Instead, you select a sample. When I'm talking about sample, sample is the representative of what? Of a group. That's a sample. So you have to select the representative. For example, if they want Nigeria to present in some places in the world, you don't expect every Nigerian to be there. It's our president that will be there. So our president, our sample, whatever he does it on behalf of every Nigerian. Understand? So that is a sample. And the sample is the group of individuals who will actually participate in the research. And to draw a valid conclusion from your result, you have to carefully decide how you will select a sample that is representative of the group as a whole. There are two methods of sampling. The first one is probability sampling, and the second one is non-probability sampling. Probability sampling is the sampling that involves a random sampling or random selection, allowing you to make a statistical inferences about the whole group. That is probability sampling. It involves what? Random selection, allowing you to make a statistical references about the whole group. And non-sampling or non-probability sampling involves non-random selection based on the convenience or other criteria allow you to easily collect data. So probability sampling is a method of sampling. I want to say it another way. It's a method of sampling in which the researcher has no idiosyncrasy of every member of the group, and every member of the group has the same chance of being selected in the sample. There is no preference. It is never subjective. It's an objective way of what? It's an objective way of what? Of selection. Every member, let's assume we have 100 in a group. So every member has what? Has 1/100 chance of being selected in the group. That's what we mean by probability sampling. And under non-probability sampling, this involves non-random selection based on the confidence or data criteria or other criteria allow you to easily collect initial data. That is what we mean by what? Non-random sampling. And every member or none of the, let me say every member of the group has no equal chance. They do not have what? They do not have equal chance. Every person could be selected based on the judgment of the selector, that is the researcher. That's on that. And when we are talking of population, let's say something regarding that. Population versus sampling. What we are trying to say is that population is the entire group that you want to draw conclusion about, and the sample is the specific group of individuals that you will collect data from. And the population can be defined in terms of geographical location, in terms of age, in terms of income, in terms of any other characteristics that you can deem fit. That's when we are talking of population. Or I could better explain it in this way. Population is the totality of the universe. What is the totality of universe that are concerned about a particular study. And sample in its own is the subset of the universe or the group selected to carry out or selected for the purpose of the research. That is sample. Now, What is sample frame or sampling frame? Sampling frame is the actual list of individuals that the sample will be drawn from. That is sample frame. Is what the actual list, if it is 100 or if it is 1000. Understand? So the frame is 1000 employee. So from this 1000 you can select any number of people you want as your sample. And this sample we are saying should include the entire target. Sorry, the sampling frame include the entire target population, and nobody who is not part of that population is not part of the frame. Understand? Now, for example, you can see on the screen, you are doing research on working condition at company X. The population is all 1000 employee of that company. Everybody in that company is just audience. So your sampling frame of the company's database, or your sampling frame is the company database, which contains the name of all the employees. That's about the sampling frame. Now, what is sample size? You know, from sample frame, which contains the totality of every element in that study. Sample size is the number of individuals in your sample, or the number of individuals in your sample depends on the size of the population and how precise you want the results to represent the population as a whole. If you have a large, the normal thing, let me tell you this, the normal thing is that ask everybody, if it is human being you are relating with, ask everybody question regarding your research. So whatever you get will be the full representative of everybody. That is the ideal situation. But where it is not possible for you to ask everybody due to one reason or the other, the time, the cost, whatever, you have to select the sample. And the larger your sample, the more representative, sorry, the larger your the size of your sample, the representative your sample is. Understand? And you can use a sample size calculator to determine how big your sample should be. There are a lot of models. Understand? Like this Yaro Yamani. We call it Yaro Yamani. It's a model. It forms a model to determine what the size should be. Understand? And in general, the larger the sample size, the more accurately and confident you can make inference about the whole population. That's that. So let me just put it in a simple term. Sample size is the number of individuals you want to contain in your sample. And we have probability sample, as I said. Let's now look at each of these sampling methods one after the other. Probability sampling means that every member of the population has equal chance of being selected, and it is mainly used in quantitative research. If you want to produce results that are representative of the whole population, you need to use what? A probability sampling techniques. What are the types? The first one is simple random sampling. In simple random sampling, every member of the population has equal chance of being selected. So your sampling frame should include the whole population. And to conduct this type of sampling, you can use tools like random number generator or other techniques that's based entirely on chance. For example, if you want to select a sample or simple random sampling of 100 employee of the company X, the company X contains 1000 AB. So you assign the number to every employee in the company database from 1 to 1000, and every member, and use a random number generator to select 100 numbers. Another one is systematic sampling method. When I'm talking of systematic sampling method, this is similar to simple random sampling, but it is usually slightly easier to conduct. Every member in the population is listed in the is listed with a number, but instead of randomly generating the number, individuals are choosing at the regular interval. For example, all employees of the company are listed in alphabetical order. So the first 10 employees are randomly selected at a starting point. So number 6, from number 6 onward, every 10th person on the list is selected. You have 6, 16, 26, and so on and so forth until you get your 100. Anyway, let me tell you how it is. The sample will be n over n, where n is equal to population, and n is sample you want to select, sample number, which is 10. So what you will do is this: 1000 all over 100, that is 10 abi. So that is 10. We call this one nth time. So in this case, that is every 10. What you will do is that the first number will be selected randomly. Understand? Once you select the first number randomly, from that you now count 1 to the power 10. The 10th one will be selected, count another 10. The 20th one will be selected, count another 10. 30 one will be selected, 40s will be selected, 50. You continue like that until you get to the 1000. So by the time you are counting 10s, 10s, you'll be able to make 100 representative. That is how sampling is done. So how systematic sampling is done. The next one is stratified sampling. When we are talking of stratified sampling, it's also part of the part of the probability sampling. So stratified sampling involves dividing the population into subpopulation that may differ in important way. It allows you to draw more precise conclusions by ensuring that every group is properly represented. Now, it's the way you divide the population into strata. So every stratum is known as certain. Every stratum is identified by certain characteristics of behavior. This is done to ensure that every part of the population is adequately represented. We have different characteristics of people. If you are dealing with people, among people, let's assume employee, we have male, we have female, we have young, we have the old, we have social, we have local, all those things. So based on the identified characteristics, you divide them. So the process of dividing them is what we call stratifying, and assigned to different strata. So each now strata will now be ensured that it's represented in the entire sample. Look at this example. They said the company has 800 female employees, 200 male employees. You want to ensure that sample reflect the gender balance of the company. So you sort the population into 2 strata based on the gender. Then you use the random sampling method each data. Select 80 women and 20 men, which gives you the representative of 100. Understand? So if you are not using stratify and you want 100, you may say, okay, let's pick 50 male and 50 female. It means that female will not be adequately represented, while male will be overrepresented, because the population of female is more than that of the male. Likewise, for you to make the female to be highly or deeply represented, you have to let their member be more in the sample. So that is stratified. The next one is a cluster sampling. Cluster sampling also involves dividing the population into subgroups, but each subgroup will have similar characteristics to the whole sample. Instead, the sampling individual from each subgroup, you randomly select the entire subgroup. For example, the company has 10 cities. This cluster is more or less related to places. Understand? Like I said, we have 10 cities across the country. So you don't have the capacity to travel every offices to collect the data. So you use random sampling to select 3 offices. These are your cluster. Next one to look at is non-probability sampling. So in non-probability sampling method, the samples that is individuals are selected based on non-random criteria, and not every member has a chance of being included. It is based on the judgment of the selector or the researcher. This type of sampling is easier and cheaper to access, but it has a high risk of bias. We call that one sampling bias, and you cannot use it to make a valid statistical inferences about the whole population. It is highly subjective. And types as follow. We have convenience sampling. So a convenience sampling sample includes the individual who happen to be most accessible to the researcher. That is convenient. For example, you want to ask students some questions. Instead of go visiting all the students, just go by the one that are closer to your house. And whatever you ask them, you do representative of what you're supposed to ask all the students you want to use. So it is very inexpensive and easy to gather the initial data, but there is no way to tell if the sample is actually representative of the population. So it can't generate or it can't produce a generalized result or generalizable result. For example, you are researching opinion about student support service in your university. So after each of your classes, you ask your fellow students to complete a survey on the topic. It's a convenient way to gather data. But as you may only suppose students taking the same classes as you at the same level, the sample is not representative of all the students in your university. Another one we have is what we call the second type under non-probability is voluntary response sampling. This is similar to confidence sample. A voluntary response sample is mainly based on each of access, and instead of researcher choosing participants and directly contacting them, people volunteer themselves. Understand? That is a voluntary response. People volunteer themselves. So the voluntary response samples are always at least somewhat biased, as some people will inherently be more likely to volunteer than others. So example, you send out a survey to all students at universities and a lot of students decide to complete it. This can certainly give you some of the insight into the topic, but the people who responded are more likely to be those who have strong opinion about the student's support service. So you cannot be sure that this opinion are representative of all students. So the next one is purposive sampling. That is purposive sampling. This type of sampling involves the researcher using their judgment to select a sample that is more useful for the purposes of the research. It is often used in qualitative research. In what? Qualitative research, where researchers want to gain detailed knowledge about a specific phenomenon rather than make statistical inferences. An effective purposive sample must have a clear criterion and rationale for inclusion. Example is that you want to know more about the opinions and experiences of disabled students at your universities. You have purposefully selected a number of students which have with different support needs in your organization in order to gather a very range of data on their experiences with the student services. That's an example of purposive sampling. We also have another one which we call snowballing or snowball sampling. Snowball sampling is when something let me say it this way. When you need certain sample, understand, you use random sampling to select the first sample or the first set. Understand? So you will now start asking the first sample you selected about information regarding other members of the population for you to know which among others is qualified to be your sample. We said if population is hard to access, snowball sampling can be used to recruit participants via other participants. So the number of people you have access to snowballs you as you get in contact with more people. Understand? You enter a class, you try to look for what? The HOC as an sample. So from the end of the class or end of the department, sorry, end of the class or HOC, from end of the class, you can know characteristics of some people in that class for you to know which one is qualified to be in your sample or not. For example, you are researching experiences on homelessness in your city. Since there is no list of homeless people in the city, probably sampling is not possible. You meet a one person who agreed to participate in the research and she puts you in contact with the other homeless people that she knows in that area. That's an example. So others I want to add is what we call quota. So quota method is when you select sample based on the number or based on the characteristics of certain set of elements. So you have given certain number of proportion that you want to select, and it's based on that you now select. This type of research is actually not a kind of research that brings about objective. It's highly subjective. So that is on that.